Welcome to the Modernize or Die podcast, CFML News Edition, where we keep you up to date with everything going on in the Cold Fusion community. We'll share the latest news on events, releases to engines, frameworks, libraries, and tools, as well as spotlighting quality content from the community.
Hello and welcome to the Modernize or Die podcast, CFML News Edition. It is September 5th, 2023, episode number 203. My name is Eric Peterson, and joining with me today is Mr. Daniel Garcia. How are you, Daniel?
I am great, Eric. If I was any better, I would be you, my friend. I'm feeling good.
Been doing this every 2 weeks. We don't get to do this with each other as much, so
I know.
now it's a rare treat. Well, we'd like to start off by thanking our sponsor, Orta Solutions, the maker of all your favorite box products like Cold Box, Command Box, Forge Box, Test Box, and many more. And there's a few ways that you can say thank you to Orta Solutions for sponsoring this podcast.
Absolutely. You can like and subscribe to our videos on YouTube. You can help Ortus reach for the stars by starring and forking our repos on the GitHubs. You can subscribe to our podcast on your podcast apps or wherever fine podcasts are sold. I guess this is a free one, so it doesn't make sense. You can sign up for a free or paid account on CFCast, which is releasing new content regularly.
Also, you can jump over to our Box Life store for amazing swag, or get one of our great books like 102 Cold Box Quick Tips and Tricks, or learn modern cold fusion in 100 minutes. Finally, there's your adjective of the week to our lovely Patreons. We have 40 Patreons currently, and we will tell you at the end how you too can become a Patreon and what perks come along with that.
Ooh, I can't wait.
So this is going to be maybe a shorter podcast. Knock on wood. I feel like I say that and it's always long. But our first two sections for news and announcements and new releases and updates, I did not have anything for today. So we're going to be skipping through those. We have a good number of blog posts to kind of make it up, but we're kind of skipping through those ones. And our webinars and meetups are kind of small too. We got one to talk about. At the end of the month, September 29th, the Hawaii Cold Fusion Meetup group is hosting Nolan Irk talking about object-oriented programming and cold fusion. That will be at 12 p.m. Hawaii Standard, 5 Central, 6 on the Eastern Seaboard. And anybody else, you're going to have to plug that in.
No, man. You know what, Eric? I am being lax again. I got so caught up listening to you that I forgot to paste the links from the welcome.
Yeah, we'll catch us up. I know I have that kind of a voice, so it's okay.
I do. It's just like, come on, Eric, tell me more.
So again, come learn about object-oriented programming and see it in Cold Fusion with examples at the Hawaii.
Excellent. I always wonder, John's in the chat, do you guys ever, are you like on the beach in a laptop with your headset just doing the CFUG, or you're actually like, someplace? We'll see if he gets back to us.
I don't know if sand and laptops are a great combination, but maybe in small doses.
No, maybe.
Well, if you can't wait that long, you can always jump over to the CF Casts. If any of you have finished watching those all through, hit us up in the chat or send us a message. We can shout you out for that because there's a lot to get through. And very soon coming out, Grant has been plugging away on his mastering CB Wire, and I know I am waiting just for a couple post-production things for Cold Box Elixir to start rolling out. So look for those dropping very soon. Even our conferences are kind of light because we're right before some of the big ones.
Yeah, well, the next big one, I think, at least according to my notes, is Adobe CF Summit West, Las Vegas, 2nd through 4th of October. You can, actually, I don't know if you can still get your early bird passes now, but either way, even the regular rate is still very reasonable. Adobe does a fantastic job of subsidizing this conference and really makes it, a destination conference you want to go to. And I learned last week, Eric, that Andy Buckley is going to be there as a special guest at some point.
For those probably the day 2 keynote.
Yeah, if you watch the TV show The Office, he played David Wallace.
That would be
And it's
the U.S. office, correct?
yes, the US, the funny one. The
Woo!
actually, I never watched the UK one, so I shouldn't say
Shots
that.
fired. We apologize to our UK audience here.
Oh man. What's awesome about Andy though is he was like a finance guy that kept working while he was on the show.
Hmm.
So he'd be like doing his regular 9 to 5 job and then go act in the show and just very cool, down to earth kind of guy.
That's how most of us that are aspiring actors and actresses do it. Nobody wants to pay us for. Well, early bird passes are no longer on sale, but that $199 price stands. You can still get
Nice.
tickets for $199 or get into their class the next day, or sorry, the third day, and get certified for $299.
I'm certified. I'm certifiable. I did that last year with some people, and yeah, it was good.
It was awesome. Well, we do have our Cold Fusion Summit training for Ortis right after Cold Box 7 Zero to Hero, but if you're listening to this now and haven't got tickets, unfortunately it is sold out. So you're going to have to catch us the next time we have a Cold Box 7 training. Congrats to all of you who listened to this podcast and got in. It's going to be great with Gavin and Luis, and here maybe to Into the Box.
Oh yeah, that'd be good.
We got two Into the Boxes coming up.
Well, I was saying it's kind of exciting because it feels like we're starting to really get back to normal now that these workshops are selling out, these conferences are bigger and better than ever, and it's very positive.
Very true.
But yeah, so the next Into the Box LATAM is going to be November 30th. University of Business in El Salvador. You can go to latam.intothebox.org. That's our Into the Box Latin American edition.
Right, you can go order your tickets now. I believe it's free for students and something like 15 for students and 25 for professionals. So very cheap.
Yeah. I don't know. One of these years, I'm going to try and make it down there. Just it has not been working well for me lately. Just stuff going on at that time.
Yeah. And Into the Box 2024, we announced it on our last podcast. It is at Optica in Washington, D.C., May 15th through 17th. So you can start. You can even order blind tickets, which is you're ordering before we've announced the speakers. You can do that now. And I believe our call for speakers, I believe it was. I could be wrong. There it is. I did find it.
Apparently nobody's calling me.
So let's throw that link in the show notes in the chat. You can come and speak. We would love to have you speak at Into the Box 2024. Of course, if you do speak, we'll give you a ticket to the conference and set you up at with some accommodations there. It's gonna be great. I'm so excited. I love Into the Box. So, but I could gush about it for a long time, and we'll just keep going.
I know we were talking about it internally, and as soon as they decided it's DC, Eric just like lit up like I don't know what lights up, a light bulb.
Like a light bulb. I did. I lived in DC for a few years, so I'm excited to go back. I'm trying to figure out how to, bring make an experience of it.
We're talking that too, and we're ready. So I'm gonna be in Vegas in October. My wife and son are gonna tag along, and my son's 9, and he's super excited. This is his first plane trip, and so we're taking him out of school for a few days for that. And then I'm like, well, shoot, I can't really take him out again next year for the. It's only so many days you can take your kids out of school to go to conferences before they frown on that.
Yeah, that's
so
true. Tech is our go-to source. You can go check that out, filter it down to the kind of conferences that you are interested in.
It looks like in the chat they're saying there's some video buffering issues going on.
Recorded copies, so the recording
stream to see how many times I cough or scratch something, and I'm noticing it's a little blurry for me. Or maybe I just look like that. I don't know.
Well, let's jump into the blogs, tweets, and videos of the week. Table example with CB Wire. So, JavaScript, jQuery plugin. Like, this thing is been around for a long time. But it keeps around because it is incredibly feature rich. So we at my one of my first jobs, we'd have a saying that was never doubt data tables, if you needed to do something, you could do it in data tables. um, and so this is an example. In fact, CBWire is the latest, but I've seen many a JavaScript framework wrap data tables. But under the hood, it's all data tables.
I didn't realize
And here's a
this was
CBWire
case.
version of that. So we'll include a link to the community post Grant has, but also there is an entire original Nintendo games on it. You search by columns. Again, data tables is amazing if you haven't used it. And now you can use it with the declared. And especially if you haven't checked out CBWire, come see how easy you can wrap a JavaScript library like this using CBWire.
I didn't realize this was the actual like data table, old school jQuery implementation. It's one of those Xeroxing things, or
Yeah, sometimes it is like
um,
that. You'll hear people just call any sort of smart table a data table, but this is the data table, I believe.
Grant said it is not. And he
Ooh, I'm so sorry.
it's all
I saw the
functionality.
screenshot and I'm like, that looks like data tables.
Well, yeah, that's what I would have thought too. But it's all functionality written in CBWire, not a wrapper. He did demo this at one of our internal meetings recently, and it was really cool. But you might not have been there for that one actually. But
I must have
but yeah,
missed that. My apologies, Grant. So pure CFML here. Wow, now I really need to go through this repo. That's even more impressive. It
all
would have been
retweet
impressive just to have the data tables plug in, but now it's even more.
is good talking, right? Even if we don't know what we're talking about. But thanks to Grant for being in the chat, to setting us straight. Oh man. Okay, so moving on. There was a CV. What is CVE? I'm like having a
It's like critical vulnerability something.
exploit, critical vulnerability exploit, maybe.
Sure.
There was one that came out this summer about Confusion acts for Adobe Confusion Control Bypass for a CFML authentication component. Brian went through, kind of talked about what it is. I think he's the one that found it.
Yes.
Tested, submitted it to the CERT team. They fixed it. They got released, and now it's been almost a month or two since they've released it. And now he's talking about what it actually is and how we out and fixes. And if you're kind of interested to see how these things work, go check it out, because maybe you might be the next person to find a vulnerability and can report it. And
vulnerability. This is the one that was found back in July and fixed in July.
yes,
And I liked it because I don't know those when they described it. So even a simpleton like me could understand what the problem was, which is basically all of the um, like rate limiting or IP restrictions where it could be bypassed and somebody could brute force guess your username and password to the Cold Fusion admin. So
well, it's also great. A lot of times, some of these things are kind of like black boxes to people. We don't really think about it. It just kind of works. And when he does stuff like this and kind of explains the process, you're like, oh, wait a second. And you start thinking about what else could be there and what else might you want to be worried about. And innovation drives innovation. So,
yep.
Okay. And then we've got several from Ben Nadell coming up here. That's not really true, although he writes enough for weeklies. So yeah, since we've gone every other week, there's even more Ben to go around. So he's talking about using the CF loop to iterate over a file line by line in Cold Fusion. So you gotta iterate over a file, a CSV file, to import a bunch of data, and instinctively he just started using the regular file functions to read stuff in there. And after he's worked with it, he's like, wait a second, I could just use CF loop for this. And he did. And he's like, this is way much less code, much more simpler code. And then I think he even said, oh, look at this. I blogged about this, like, I don't know, 13 years ago or something, and just forgot about it. And so, yeah, 13 years ago. And so, yeah, basically, remember, if you need to do it works, it's there.
Yeah, it was nice to know that CF Loop, handles all of that under the hood for you. So, good job, Cold Fusion. We like that. Kind of a corollary to that was using seekable read files in Cold Fusion. So, again, when Ben was working on read by line, he found that you can use the file seek function to kind of jump around a file. You do agree at the end. He's like, to be honest, I don't really have a use case for this, but now you know, and I'm kind of at the same point. So if you need to
Annoying
seek
thing.
around the
Oh,
file, randomly, you can use the file seek method.
every time you say or anybody says, and now you know, I immediately can reply with, and knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe. I was a kid. I watched cartoons.
All right, and we have a couple more from Ben. So next up, we're talking about labeled loops in Cold Fusion, which again chalk this up to the I didn't know that or continue keywords. You can give optionally you can give a name, and it will break or continue back to the loop that you have specified with that name. Um, his example, picture's worth 1,000 words. But yeah, not many use cases jump to mind. You obviously need more than one loop for this to kind of have any utility, but you would be able to, inside an inner loop, say, I'm going to break back to the outer loop, or I'm going to continue the outer loop. So I can see some cases where it could make multiple nested loops a little clearer when you're using those break and continue words. Um, but yeah, it's just interesting. Didn't even know that that was a feature of Cold Fusion. So if you need to do that now, you can label your loops.
Anyone want to take a bet how long it's going to take Eric to make box loop module? Now that he's thought about it, he's like, you know what? This will solve so many problems.
Nah, I usually reach for something like recursion on these. So, but
That's when
that's
I usually reach for modules you write. So we all got our toolboxes and toolkits.
all
Okay, so
right.
one more following up the blogs. Ben blogs about including CSS file content using a CF include. So when you're using a CF include, it's not just for CF files, you can include other files as well. And he does an example of reading in a CSS file into his page using CF include. And Eric and I were talking about this earlier. And it's like, well, I can kind of see it, but is this one of those just because you can doesn't mean you should type of things? Or I guess I'm just used to always just reading in the CSS as is, unless it needs to be dynamically rendered or something that I can understand. But
Yeah. Have a link tag referencing an external CSS file. It's another network request. And that is true. That takes time, especially over slower connections or mobile connections. And so inlining it could be faster. The downside is that's not going to be cached by your mentioning that very advanced kind of front end frameworks nowadays will determine what CSS do you need for the initial page render, above the scroll or above the fold, and it will inline that and it will put the rest in a file. And so kind of the best of both worlds.
nice. Oh, and something from the chat. Scott Steinbeck, he commented that he's publishing some updates to the CB Playwright in the next few days.
Well, that will be exciting to see.
Yeah, I know you're a super CB Playwright fan, right?
That's true. Plus, that those changes will have to come through me if it's going to the module.
So heads up, Scott's going
um,
to be watching some updates.
nice. The final thing to note about include, it does try to parse and execute the file. So in the case of CSS, it's all within the style tag, or it's just like CSS blocks. That's not going to be a problem, but it's something to think about, especially with pound signs, right?
Oh yeah.
There is an Adobe Cold Fusion feature that you can give it a specific extension list to compile. So for instance, you can just pass CFM. That's the only thing I want you to compile, and then it won't even try to compile your CSS includes at all. So doesn't seem like there's a Lucy corollary for that, but there is an Adobe Cold Fusion setting.
Oh,
All right, well, that ends our blogs today. Let's jump into Find a Job. On getcfmljobs.com, we have over 94 positions from 61 companies across 41 locations and 5 countries.
Yeah, there's 4 new jobs listed these last 2 weeks. There's a full-time CF programmer in Washington, D.C. Maybe they'll come into the box.
Yes.
There's a CF developer of 4 to 6 years for Mumbai, India. And then a CF programmer for remote for GeoCivics. I assume that's the U.S. based on the link. Don't forget, there's also a jobs channel in the CFML Slack team as well as the Box team Slack. Go in there and post. I thought I saw some stuff recently in the CFML Slack. Some people looking for some things, and go check it out.
This to our ForgeBox module of the week. Today we're talking about a nifty module from Ryan Albrecht, just called IP, which is great. I can't believe we haven't stolen this before. But you can box install IP, and this is a helper that's going to get you information you do once you've grabbed that IP address. Well, you can get the address, the number of hosts, prefix length, broadcast address, subnet mask, get it in binary, decimal, network decimal, all of these things. In addition to getting all those data, you can send it all out to a struct using the toMomento function. So if your use case needs to get any of this information about the IP address you're being passed, this is a great module for that. Maybe my favorite part of this module is the license at the top. Ryan says, I don't know about licenses, do whatever you want, which is a great license. Good job.
So would that technically be the MIT license or the Apache? Or which one's the do whatever you want license?
I don't know. MIT's probably close, but I don't know. I like that. So that is our module of the week. Box install IP will get you that one.
He did mention that you don't need to use ColdBox for it. Of course, if you do, everything's nicer and shinier and.
It provides the mappings for you automatically, but yes, and there's no dependencies. It's a pure CFML.
Okay.
All right, and as for our VS Quick Find and Jump, so this is solving a very small concern that maybe you don't have, but for me, when I Command F in a file and I find what I need, it annoys me to no end that I then have to hit escape once or twice to get rid of that find box, and sometimes it jumps me back to wherever I was. And it was very annoying. So this quick find and jump extension takes over, or rather you can bind it to Command F, and as soon as you find something, hit escape multiple times. And if you want to quick find the next, there are keyboard shortcuts for that, and you can jump and down in previous matches using those keyboard shortcuts instead of hitting enter multiple times or using the mouse. So not for everybody, but if you, like me, hate having to hit escape all the time for your find box.
I know this is an extension, but there was a post that somebody put in there about Visual Studio for Mac. There's a retirement announcement coming up. They're announcing, I guess, as of August 30th, they're going to retire VS Studio for Mac, Visual Studio for Mac.
Yeah, not Visual Studio Code, the original, okay. Let's program in .NET.
Okay, I misread that when somebody posted it.
Yeah, I don't think they'd give up the Mac market for VS Code.
I wouldn't think so, so I was a little surprised. But okay, that makes sense.
All right, and now that brings us to the end of the podcast. I think I can declare that we were right. It was a shorter one, only about 30 minutes here. So, news. All right.
Yep, and try and catch us when Gavin's around, because Gavin's always good for longer
exposition.
Exposition.
We want to end by thanking our mind-boggling Patreon supporters. These are individuals and companies that are personally supporting our open source initiatives to ensure the great toolings like CommandBox, ForgeBox, ColdBox, ContentBox, TestBox, and all the other boxes keep getting the continuous development they need. And it funds the cloud infrastructure that our community relies on, like ForgeBox at patreon.com/ortasolutions. For those supporting the bronze package and up, you get a ForgeBox Pro and a CFcast subscription. And all Patreons have a awesome profile badge for our community website, access to their own private forum on that website, and access to a private channel on the Box Team Slack. Again, find out more at patreon.com/ortasolutions. Now,
okay. I guess I'm
Daniel, will you take us through our mind-boggling top Patreons?
Absolutely. So we've got John Wilson with Snaptracks. We've got Tomorrow's Guides, Jordan Clark, Gary Knight, Giancarlo Gomez, David Bellinger out there in South America. Hello, David. We got Dan Card, Jeffrey McGee with Sunstar Media, Dean Mounder, Kevin Wright, Doug Kane, Nolan Irk, and Abdul Raheen, and of course many more patrons. But those are the top ones that we are announcing. Otherwise, we'd be here. Eric, we could have read everybody, and that would have filled up the time nicely. Who doesn't
That's
like hearing
true.
your name read in my basso voice?
You can find the full list of Patreons on our website, ordersolutions.com/about-us/sponsors. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. We will see you in a couple weeks, back at the same time. Catch you then.
Show notes for this episode can be found at cfmlnews.modernizeordie.io, where you can also subscribe to your favorite podcast player like Spotify or iTunes. We also have the link to YouTube to find more videos just like this. The music used in this podcast is under a royalty-free license from Sound.com and Blue Tree Audio.